Ever feel like your own brain is working against you? Like it's on overdrive and you just can't get it to stop?
Ugh, tell me about it.
Well, that's exactly what we're diving deep into today, the wild world of overthinking and anxiety.
And just a heads up, we're not going to sugarcoat it with some good vibes only nonsense.
We're getting real, folks.
Yeah, we're talking real strategies, real struggles, and real solutions.
And to help us unpack all of this, we've got the amazing Dr. Julie Smith. You know her, right?
Oh, absolutely. She's like the queen of mental health on TikTok.
Wow.
Makes psychology actually make sense.
Totally. So she did this incredible interview on the Diary of a CEO podcast, and let me tell you, it's jam-packed with wisdom.
Seriously good stuff.
So first things first, let's talk about this whole illusion of perfection thing that Dr. Smith brings up.
Oh yeah, this one hits home.
Think about it, right? We're constantly bombarded with these picture-perfect lives on social media.
Everyone's got the perfect career, the perfect partner, the perfect kids who never ever throw food on the floor.
Yeah, it's like everyone else has their act together, and we're the only ones struggling to keep up.
Right. And Dr. Smith argues that this constant comparison game is a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely. It sets these unrealistic expectations and makes us feel like we're not good enough just as we are.
And then the anxiety kicks in. We
Yep.
start overthinking everything, second-guessing ourselves, and wondering why we can't have it all figured out like everyone else seems to.
Exactly. It's exhausting and, frankly, a little soul-crushing. So what's the solution?
Well, Dr. Smith says it's about challenging those unrealistic expectations and redefining what success means for us on our own terms.
I love that. It's about saying, hey, my life might be messy and imperfect, but it's mine, and that's perfectly okay.
Right. And that's where the power of baby steps comes in. We don't need a complete life overhaul to find peace and happiness.
It's about focusing on those small, consistent changes that add up over time.
Exactly. It's like building any habit. Start small, stay consistent, and trust the process.
So instead of trying to change everything overnight, maybe it's committing to 5 minutes of mindfulness each morning or setting that boundary in a relationship that's been draining you.
Absolutely. And you know what? Even with the best of intentions, we all have those days, right?
Oh, for sure. Those days where life throws you a curveball and you just feel totally off your game.
Totally. And telling someone to just be happy when they're feeling down is like the least helpful advice ever.
It's like telling a fish to climb a tree. Just not going to happen.
I know, right? So Dr. Smith suggests having a few mood shifters in your back pocket, things that help you hit the reset button.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Well, it could be anything: listening to your favorite music, getting outside for some fresh air, calling a friend who always makes you laugh.
I love that. It's about finding what works for you, not what some self-help guru says you should be doing.
Exactly. And speaking of things that are good for your mood, can we talk about sleep for a minute?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's like our society glorifies busyness and sleep deprivation.
It's true. We wear it like a badge of honor. Oh, I only got 4 hours of sleep last night. I'm so productive.
But let's be real, lack of sleep messes with everything. Our mood, our focus, our immune system, you name it.
It's like running our bodies into the ground.
It is. We need to stop celebrating the hustle harder mentality and prioritize rest. Trust me, your mind and body will thank you for it.
1,000,000%. Now, getting back to this whole overthinking thing, Dr. Smith talks about this idea of unmasking your core beliefs. And it's fascinating.
Okay, so what does that even mean? Unmasking my core beliefs sounds kind of intense.
It is. It's about getting to the root of our thoughts and behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
understanding those deep-seated beliefs that often stem from our childhood experiences.
Wait, so you're telling me my childhood is still impacting me today, even after all these years?
You better believe it. Our childhood experiences, especially those early relationships, shape our view of ourselves and the world around us.
It's like those early experiences create a blueprint that we often follow, even if it's no longer serving us.
Exactly. And Dr. Smith is a big advocate for a type of therapy called cognitive analytic therapy, or CT, which helps people identify and challenge these core beliefs.
Okay, so can you give me an example? How does this core belief thing actually play out in real life?
Sure. Let's say you grew up with a parent who was constantly criticizing you. Never quite good enough no matter how hard you tried.
Oof, that's rough.
Right. So That experience might lead you to develop a core belief that you're fundamentally flawed or not good enough.
And that belief can then show up in different areas of your life, like how you approach your work or your relationships.
Absolutely. It's like having this inner critic who's constantly whispering doubts in your ear, holding you back from going after what you truly want.
So it's not just about positive thinking, it's about addressing those deeper, often subconscious beliefs that are driving our behaviors.
Exactly. It's about getting curious about those patterns and asking ourselves, where is this coming from? Is this belief really true, or is it just a story I've been telling myself for years?
Wow, that's powerful. But what if therapy isn't accessible right now? What can people do to start exploring these core beliefs on their own?
Well, Dr. Smith suggests journaling and self-reflection, taking the time to really tune into our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors.
Okay, so like paying attention to those recurring themes in our lives.
Exactly. It's
Yep.
amazing what we can uncover when we start paying attention. Now, this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Dr. Smith talks about how our brains are like these incredible evidence-gathering machines.
Evidence gathering machines.
Yeah, it's like our brains are constantly looking for proof to support our existing beliefs, even if those beliefs are negative or limiting. It's like we've got these inner lawyers building a case for or against ourselves based on our past experiences.
Okay, I kind of love that analogy, but how do we convince our inner lawyer to stop gathering evidence that supports those negative beliefs? Those beliefs that are holding us back.
Well, that's where those baby steps come in again. When we start taking action that contradicts those negative beliefs, we present our brain with new evidence.
So if my inner critic's telling me I'm going to totally bomb that presentation at work, the best thing to do is actually practice and prepare. Like gather real evidence to the contrary.
Exactly. It's like showing your brain, see, look, I could do this.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's like retraining our brains to see the positive, to focus on what we can control.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of control, Dr. Smith also talks about this idea of values-based living, which is a little different from just setting goals.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the difference? I mean, I love a good goal, don't get me wrong, but how do values play into all of this?
So a goal is something you achieve, right? Like a destination you reach. But a value is more like a guiding principle. It's the why behind what you do.
So if my goal is to write a book, my value might be creativity or self-expression.
Exactly. It's about identifying those core principles that give your life meaning and direction.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we actually figure out what our values are? I feel like a lot of people, myself included, might struggle to even pinpoint those.
Well, Dr. Smith suggests doing regular values check-ins.
Values check-ins, like a performance review for your soul. I'm into it.
Exactly. So take some time to reflect on different areas of your life, your work, your relationships, your personal growth, and ask yourself, does this area of my life align with what truly matters to me?
It's like giving yourself permission to hit the pause button and make sure you're on the right track.
Exactly. And if something feels off, it might be a sign that you need to make some adjustments to realign with your values.
So, for example, if connection is a core value for me, but I find myself constantly comparing my relationship to those picture-perfect couples on Instagram and feeling inadequate, that's a sign that something's out of whack.
Right. It's like your values are your compass, and it's your job to make sure you're actually following them.
Love that analogy. Okay, so we've talked about core beliefs, values, baby steps. What else does Dr. Smith have up her sleeve when it comes to managing overthinking and anxiety?
Okay, so this next part might sound a little counterintuitive. Are you ready for this?
Oh boy, I love a good plot twist. Hit me with it.
Dr. Smith is a big advocate for embracing our negative emotions.
Wait, hold up. You want me to embrace the stuff that makes me want to crawl under a rock and hide? I don't know about that.
I know, it sounds crazy. We live in a world that's obsessed with positivity. But Dr. Smith argues that all emotions, even the messy, uncomfortable ones, serve a purpose.
So instead of trying to suppress those feelings or pretend they don't exist, I should try to understand what they're trying to tell me.
Exactly. Think of your emotions as messengers. Instead of shooting the messenger, listen to the message. What is this emotion trying to communicate?
That's a really interesting way to look at it. But
Okay.
what about when those messengers are practically screaming in my ear and I feel like I'm going to lose it? Any tips for navigating those moments?
Well, this is where mindfulness comes in handy. It's about learning to observe your thoughts and feelings without judgment.
Okay, easier said than done, right?
Oh, for sure. It takes practice. But even starting with a few minutes of mindful breathing each day can make a world of difference. And speaking of breath, Dr. Smith is a huge advocate for using breathing exercises to manage anxiety.
I've tried breathing exercises before, but sometimes I feel like I'm doing it wrong. Like, am I supposed to be breathing from my stomach, my chest? Help?
I hear you. It can feel a little awkward at first, and there are so many different techniques out there. But Dr. Smith recommends a technique called box breathing. Have you heard of it?
Box breathing. It sounds vaguely familiar. Tell me more.
So it's this super simple technique that can help calm your nervous system down. Basically, you imagine you're tracing the size of a box with your breath. You inhale for a count of 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and hold for 4. It's like a mini vacation for your mind.
Okay, I'm definitely adding box breathing to my self-care toolkit. It sounds like something I could actually do, even in the midst of a panic attack.
Exactly. You can do it anytime, anywhere. Now, another thing that Dr. Smith talks about that really resonated with me is this idea that confidence cannot grow if we are never willing to be without it. Isn't that a powerful statement?
It's so true. We often think of confidence as this thing that we either have or we don't. But she's saying that true confidence comes from being willing to step outside of our comfort zones, even when we feel uncertain or afraid.
Right. It's about embracing the vulnerability that comes with growth and trusting that we can handle whatever challenges come our way.
I love that she uses this analogy of two balloons connected by a tube. If one balloon represents confidence and the other vulnerability, we need to be willing to let a little air into the vulnerability balloon for the confidence balloon to expand.
Such a great visual.
Yeah.
It shows that confidence and vulnerability aren't opposites. They're interconnected.
So if I'm terrified of public speaking, but I want to build my confidence in that area, I shouldn't start by trying to give a TED Talk.
Maybe not right away. Start smaller. Maybe you join a Toastmasters group or practice giving a presentation to a trusted friend.
Baby steps, right?
Always. Now, speaking of connection,
Ah, yes, human connection. It's like the secret sauce to a happy and a fulfilling life, wouldn't you say?
absolutely. But it can be so hard sometimes, especially in our hyper-connected but often isolating world. It's like we're more connected than ever through technology, but true, meaningful connection takes effort.
And let's be real, social media doesn't always help.
Yeah.
It's like we're constantly bombarded with these curated versions of people's lives, and it's easy to fall into that comparison trap.
Oh, totally. It's like we're comparing our blooper reel to everyone else's highlight reel, which is never a fair comparison.
So how do we combat that? How do we stay grounded in reality and appreciate our own relationships for what they are, even when social media is screaming at us to feel inadequate?
That's such a good question. I think it's about remembering that real relationships, like real life, are messy. There are ups and downs, disagreements, and challenges. And that's okay.
It's about embracing the imperfections and focusing on the things that truly matter, like communication, trust, and support.
Exactly. And remembering that everyone is fighting their own battles, even if they don't post about it on Instagram.
So true. We never really know what's going on behind closed doors.
Exactly. Now, are you ready to dive into a slightly heavier topic?
Oh boy, here we go. You know I'm always up for a good existential crisis. Bring it on.
Well, Dr. Smith talks about something that we all have to face eventually, but don't often talk about, and that's death.
I know, right? It's the one thing we all have in common, yet we often avoid talking about it. So how does Dr. Smith approach this topic?
Well, she's not suggesting we all become obsessed with death, but she does argue that having an awareness of our own mortality can actually be incredibly motivating.
Okay, I can see that. It puts things in perspective, right? Like what's really important in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly. It challenges us to ask ourselves, am I living a life that feels meaningful? Am I making the most of this precious time that I have?
It's like that saying, you don't know what you've got till it's gone, but applied to, well, everything.
Exactly. And Dr. Smith actually shares this really powerful question from acceptance and commitment therapy. It's like, if you were to reach the ripe old age of 104 and look back on your life, what would need to be in it for you to feel truly satisfied?
Wow, that's a question that'll make you stop and think. So it's not just about avoiding regrets, it's about actively creating a life that feels meaningful, right? A life that we can look back on and be proud of.
Yes. 1,000 times yes. It's about figuring out what truly matters to us, those values we talked about, our passions, our contributions to the world, and then mustering up the courage to align our actions with those things.
It's like we actually have more control than we realize. We get to decide what success and happiness look like for us.
Exactly. It's about defining those things on our own terms, not by society's standards or what we see on social media.
And accepting that it's okay if our version of success and happiness looks a little different from everyone else's.
Right. Embrace the messiness. Life's not about achieving some picture-perfect state of constant bliss. It's about embracing the whole experience, the highs and lows, the challenges and the triumphs.
It's about being kind to ourselves through the whole process, right? Accepting that we're all works in progress and we're constantly learning and growing.
Yes, 1,000,000%. And remembering that we don't have to have it all figured out. It's okay to ask for help and support along the way.
Speaking of support, Dr. Smith's book, Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before, is a fantastic resource. It's full of practical, actionable advice on managing stress, building healthy relationships, and living a more fulfilling life.
It's such a great read, like having a wise, compassionate friend offering guidance and support.
I love that. Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive today, what's one key takeaway you hope our listeners will remember?
Be kind to yourself. Life can be challenging, and we're all just out here doing the best we can. Celebrate those wins, no matter how small, learn from the stumbles, and never, ever be afraid to ask for help when you need it. You've got this.
Beautifully said. And on that note of encouragement, remember, you are worthy, you are capable, and you are not alone on this journey. Until next time, keep those minds curious and those hearts open.